I welcome you all to this presentation on Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie. Here is a brief introduction to his personal biographical details. He was born in Bombay on 19 June 1947. He went to school in Bombay and later at Rugby in England, and he read history at King's College, Cambridge. He moved to Pakistan in 1964 with his family and worked with a TV advertisement for some time before finally returning to England to work as a copywriter. And here are the major works by Salman Rushdie: Grimace, Midnight Children, Shame, The Jaguar Smile and Nicaraguan Journey. The most controversial novel, Satanic Verses, for which he was attacked by the militant Islamist groups. And when the Iran spiritual leader gave a fatwa against him, he actually had to go in hiding in England. The Harun and South of Sea 1990, In Good Faith, Imaginary Homelands, Essays and Criticism, Wizards of Oz, East West, The Moose Last Eye, The Ground Beneath Her Feet, Fury, Step Across This Line, Shalimar, The Cloud. And talking about the novel and the discussion, that is Midnight Children, which was published in 1981, and the novel has won the Booker Prize for Fiction. Then it has also won James Tate Black Memorial Prize, Art Council Writers Award. In 1993, it was also given the award Booker of Bookers, having been selected as the best novel that won Booker Prize in the award's 25 years history. And there are many characters there. The narrator of this novel is Ahmad Selim Sinai, and the novel is actually telling the story from 1947 to 1976, actually the period when India got independence to the declaration of emergency by Indira Gandhi, the politically volatile situations, all these things are closely related to the narrative of this novel. Though apparently it speaks about the personal things that happened in the life of Salim Sinai, it is inextricably connected to the incidents that the country witnessed after India's independence till the period of emergency. So, in a way, Salman Rushdie has been successfully weaving together the story of a person, Salim Sinai, with the history of the country, that is India, and sometimes some part of Pakistan as well, which shared a common history till 1947. And Salim was one of the children born at midnight uh, on August 15, 1947, and all the children born at midnight on the precise moment of India's independence were endowed with some kind of gifts and talents. And Salim was also had the power of telepathy that we will discuss in detail in the succeeding part of this introductory session. So talking about Salim's family, he narrates his familial background, the ancestral lineage, everything to Padma, an imaginary lady, sitting there in his closed single room. In the daytime, he works in a pickle factory. At night, he narrates the story to the imaginary lady, that is Padma. So Salim says that his grandfather was Dr. Adam Aziz, who was a physician, who used to visit Nassim's house. In those times, doctors were not allowed to examine lady patients in the complete way. The lady patients will be covered in a perforation sheet, a sheet having holes in it, and only those parts which has a disease would be shown to the doctor. So accordingly, Dr. Aziz visited the house of Nassim many a time, and he fell in love with the different parts of her body. And one day, the face was revealed when she had a problem with her face. The face was shown through the perforation hole. So Adam Aziz fell in love with her, and he married her. And they had three daughters: Emerald, the youngest, then Mumtaz, 19-year-old girl, who was not liked by the mother Nassim because of her dark complexion. but she was the favorite of her father because she was like Cordelia. She was totally devoted to the father. And there was Alia, the eldest, 21-year-old university educated girl. And one incident, meanwhile, took place there in the locality that Hummingbird, a revolutionary activist, was murdered. Meanwhile, an incident took place that Hummingbird, an activist, revolutionary activist, was murdered, and Nadir Khan, the rhymeless poet of the area, was actually suspected. So he was wanted by the police. So he sought refuge in the house of Dr. Aziz. But Aziz's wife Nassim did not like it because they had young daughters in their house. But without paying attention to the objection raised by his wife, he gave asylum to Nadir Khan in the cellar of his house. So meanwhile, General Zulfikar came to the house with respect to the inquiry he was carrying out towards the murder of Hummingbird. When he met the beautiful daughter of Adam Aziz, that is Emerald, he was infatuated with her beautiful face, though she was very young. She was just 14-year-old girl. And Nadir Khan uh, started living in the cellar of the Dr. Aziz house, and Mumtaz was given the charge of taking food to him in the cellar. And there they developed a kind of romantic relationship between them. And with the permission of the father, they got married, though the mother did not like the relationship. And even after many years, it was discovered that by the parents that the marriage remained unconsummated because Nadir Khan was actually an important person. So there was a quarrel in the family. Naseem took this occasion to raise this matter with her husband. She already did not like this one. She had stopped talking to her husband in protest against allowing Nadir Khan to stay in their house. Meanwhile, Emerald went to Zulfikar and informed him of the hiding of Nadir Khan in their house. And Zulfikar and other officers came to the house in search of Nadir Khan, but Nadir Khan had already left, leaving a note of divorce. So Nadir Khan, having left the place, Ahmad Sinai married Mumtaz. Ahmad Sinai was a leather businessman. He was in love with this. He was actually in love with Alia, the eldest daughter. But anyway, he married Mumtaz, and both of them moved to Delhi in search of better business prospects. And Mumtaz had her name changed into Amina by Ahmad Sinai. Meanwhile, the country, especially the capital Delhi, witnessed serious volatile communal tensions in the aftermath of the partition, ahead of the partition of India, and the communal tensions escalated in the city. Ahmad Sinai faced serious life threats from the one of the Hindu fanatic group called Ravana gang, which demanded protection money from all the Muslim businessmen. So he was really tensed. Meanwhile, Amina became pregnant, but she could not inform this matter to her husband because her husband was actually hiding away from these gangs. Otherwise, he would have been killed. Another thing happened in between that the Laylafa, a Hindu peep show man, happened to reach the Muslim mahalla there. Because it was in the time of this communal tension, so the Muslims attacked him. But Amina stepped in the right time, and she declared that if you want to kill him, before that you should kill the mother and the child in my womb. Thus, she declared the matter of pregnancy in front of the people before she informed the matter to her husband. And the Lailafa blessed Amina, and he said that she would be blessed with a boy with professing power. Meanwhile, the tensions increased, and Zulfikar advised Ahmad Sinai and his wife to move to Pakistan. They had already moved to Pakistan, and but some of the friends advised him to move to Bombay. So accordingly, he moved to Bombay, and there they purchased an estate by the Englishman, which was owned by the Englishman Methold, He sold off his estate to Ahmed Sinai, and they started living. So Amina uh, was experiencing labor pain, and she was admitted to the Narlaker's nursing home. And there was another woman also admitted there in the hospital, in the nursing home, with the labor pain. That was Vanida, who was the wife of Wilkie, but she was actually impregnated by the British man, Matthews. She was also admitted there, and there was a nurse, Mary Pereira, who was influenced by the communist ideals. So she wanted to commit an act of revolution. So when Amina gave birth to a boy, Vanida also at the same time, she changed the name tags of the children, and therefore the child born to Amina was given to Vanida, and the child delivered by Vanida was given to Amina, because Mr. Very stealthily and secretly, she changed the name tags of the children, because her intention was that a child born to the rich parents of Sinais should be brought up as a poor child in the family of Vanida and Wilkie, and the child born to the poor parents should be brought up by the rich parents. Therefore, thereby she wanted to effect socialism there. So it happened anyway, and meanwhile, the Times of India Bombay edition had declared that they would be giving prize to the woman giving birth to a child at the precise moment of the birth of the nation. So this award was won by Amina, and she got an appreciation letter from the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. So without the knowledge of the parents, these two children began to live with their putative parents, and Amina and Ahmad Sinai gave their son the name Salim Sinai, whereas the child given to Vanida and Wilkie was named Shiva. So the children grew up, and meanwhile, Salim Sinai met with an accident. He was admitted to a hospital. From there, he understood that he had the power of telepathy. He could actually relate to people through minds. So, and also it was found out that all the children who were born at the midnight had some kind of special powers. So, using this power of telepathy, he organized a conference of all the midnight children. There were 581 midnight children, in which Salim Sinai presided over. And he said his brain was the headquarters, so through which he could connect all people. And he exhorted them that their life had a purpose, and their purpose was to save the country. Meanwhile, Shiva objected to his plans actually. So one thing, this introduction of telepathic powers, all those things can be a part of the, what you can say, the magical realism which Salman Rushdie effectively introduced in his novel Midnight Children. So, using this power of telepathy, he was able to read people's mind. He even could find out that his mother Amina was continuing the relationship with her ex-husband, that is Nader Khan, and all those things. Meanwhile, his mother gave birth to another girl, a girl, that is Mangi Brass. So he had a sister. Uh, when Salim Sinai was admitted to hospital again, the doctor found out that the blood group of Salim Sinai did not match with either of the parents. So the parents became suspicious of the boy. They abandoned him temporarily in the hospital. And on getting discharged from the hospital, Salim Sinai was taken by his uncle Anif, a film actor, and Pia into their house. So Salim grew up there, and after some time, Samina went to the house and brought Salim back to the house. And Mary Pereira, the nurse, came to the house of Amina and Ahmed Sinai, and she confessed in front of the family members that she had committed the revolutionary act. Thereby, she actually had changed the boys born to Vanida and Amina respectively. And on hearing this, Ahmed Sinai got very angry with his wife. He held his wife responsible for all this kind of drama. Ahmed Sinai was already tensed because all his wealth has been frozen by the government of India. Meanwhile, the parents of Amina, that is Dr. Aziz and Naseem, came to live with them, and they could not withstand the way Amina's husband treated her. So all of them went to Pakistan except Ahmad Sinai, who was left alone. So they started living in Pakistan, and being in Pakistan was a kind of different experience to Salim Sinai, because from Bombay, a city which stands for plurality, composite culture, he went to Karachi, which is something like what you can say a theocratic state with which was something like a closed society. So he could never find any kind of solace there. He wanted to come back, but his mother felt really comfortable there. Meanwhile, they had a news from India that their father was admitted in a hospital because of a heart attack. So mother and children returned to India, and they took care of her husband. She took care of her husband, and another thing I should have mentioned was the perforation sheet. I told you that Adamus has fallen in love with. Actually, because of that, he could not love his wife completely. There was this perforation syndrome. The same syndrome was there with Amina also. She could not completely love her husband. She loved him part by part. But at hospital, she tried to love him completely. Meanwhile, there were a lot of political situations. Mahatma Gandhi was killed, and there were a lot of political volatile situations. They had to again move to Pakistan. They all went to Pakistan, and they started living there. Ahmed Sinai started his business there. Monkey Brass became one of the famous singers in Pakistan. Meanwhile, the India-Pakistan war took place. Ahmed Sinai and other members got killed in the war, whereas Salim Sinai got escaped. In fact, Salim Sinai had lost his power of telepathy when he moved from India to Pakistan. That we have to understand. But he developed the power of smell. In Pakistan, there happened the rule of the military. General Ayub Khan took over the power of the country, and he attacked eastern Pakistan because the people of eastern Pakistan wanted a separate nation, that is Bangladesh. So the Pakistan army was sent there. Ahmad Sinai was also forcibly sent to Pakistan along with a Pakistani army because he had a rare power of smelling and locating people. So he helped the Pakistan army locate the intellectuals, writers, the freedom fighters, etc. And they were all brutally murdered. But he felt it really, really bad because he was committing a bigger sin against humanity. So he escaped from Dhaka to Sundarban, but that was completely covered with wild animals and poisonous reptiles. So he had to run away from that. He had a very severe uh, testing time in uh, Sundarban, which he thought that was a punishment given by God for his inhuman activities, the way he aided and abetted the Pakistan army in committing atrocities against poor people, innocent people in Dhaka. Anyway, he came back to Dhaka. By that time, Pakistan army had surrendered because Indian army had intervened and helped the Bangladesh people to defeat Pakistan army. And in the Indian army, he also found Shiva there. With the help of Parvati, he escaped to India and he started living in the slums in Delhi. He was now attracted to a communist leader, Picture Singh, and he thought that communism would bring about revolution and change in the country. But the scenario in the country had changed completely. After Nehruvian era, Indira Gandhi came to power. After Lal Bahadur Shastri, Indira Gandhi came to power. She became a dictator. She began to suppress the freedom of expression. She was equated with the country, and all the oppositional voices were quelled, and that was a very testing time. And meanwhile, Salim Sinai also felt that his body was developing some kind of cracks in his body. That was symbolic of the cracks and fissures that the country developed from a tight liberal democracy to a totalitarian nation. So meanwhile, a group of people under the leadership of Sanjay Gandhi came to clear and beautify the slums. So the people were brutally killed and of course their intention was to have the forced sterilization as well. And Selim Sinai was snapped by the police. Meanwhile, another thing had actually taken place. Shiva had married Parvati because Selim did not want to marry because he was important. So Shiva agreed to marry Parvati, but by the time Parvati became pregnant, he abandoned her. And on the request of Picture Singh, Salim Singh married Parvati, and they had a child born, but the child was mute and handicapped. So the muteness, the handicapped nature of the child was also symbolic of the nature of the country, which was closely intertwined with that one. And so Parvati also got killed in the police operation. Salim Sinai and all the children were arrested. They had lost their power of telepathy. And what later happened was, Salim Sinai and others were released from the prison after the rule of Indira Gandhi, but they had lost hope in the future of the nation. So Salim Sinai, now working in the pickle factory, sitting at home and in his room at night, and he's writing this novel. But he feels that his body is disintegrating, his body is developing cracks, which is symbolic of the cracks and fissures that the country also developed. And what we find is, every incident that happened to the life of Salim Sinai is closely related to the incidents that happened to the country, the political, social, economic situations that the country actually witnessed immediately after the independence, and to the dark times of India's emergency period. So these things can be found from the novel. And also there are many other symbolic things also. Salim Sinai had a ugly distorted face, and that ugly distorted face is actually the map of India. When Pakistan was removed, a part of it was cut away on communal ground. The distortion has come about to the map of India, which is represented by the distortion of the body of Salim Sinai also. And how it also shows the communalization, the formation of Pakistan, the tensions that prevailed in India post-independence, the death of the murder of Mahatma by the fanatics. So all these incidents are beautifully intertwined and interwoven with the personal history of Selim. Now we will look at some of the major themes of this novel. So before that, there was a comment by Brendan Timothy that this novel, Midnight Children, is a post-colonial metafiction about third world world. And we know what metafiction is all about. It's a fiction about fiction. So Selim's writing of the fiction can be the way Rushdie invents the novel. Selim's writing about the fiction can also be about the way a nation actually invents its history. So the multiple narration, the different voices, the way Selim alters his own narrations, negates his previous narration, keeps on changing the details of his narration, infuriates Padma, the imaginary listener. But one thing we have to understand is that, actually Rushdie wanted to present the idea that the nation's history is a not linear, singular one, which is pluralistic and which has multiple voices embedded in it. So what we find as the history of the nation is probably the history of the elites, the upper class, upper caste people, but it also has got in it, the history of the downtrodden and the marginalized. So Midnight Children advocates the plurality of the fractured self. So there is a fractured, the body of Salim Sinai is fractured, which constantly developed cracks and fissures. Actually, the cracks and fissures that his body developed, that he claimed his body developed, was not real, because he was taken to the hospital by Padma, but the doctor said that there was no sign of any cracks and fissures. So the cracks and fissures that he said he had was actually the psychological cracks and fissures, which we could find in the body of nation's mind also. Our nation was divided into two and later into three, and it was not just a geographical fragmentation, which was also a psychological fragmentation. So that can be seen here. And Sinai's physical importance and deformed shape can be, as I told you in the previous slide, can be the caricature of the political map of India. because the map of India has been deformed with the division of Pakistan and Bangladesh, Eastern Pakistan at that period of time. So the novel can be the allegory of Indian history. So it can be read as a literature of subversion, every form of convention and authority. So Salman Rushdie wanted deliberately to flout all the conventions of a novel writing by denying order and unity to the narration of Selim. Similarly, the authenticity of history, the authentic version of history has been subverted by Salim Sinai through his narration of different voices and the constant denial and correction of the details that he provided earlier. So Rushdie presents an ideological post-colonial critique of the linear imperialistic discourse of meta-history, which represses rather than distorts India's own account of history. So the imperialist always believed in a kind of linear history, stereotypes, but he wanted to present that the history is actually a mixture of multiple voices, which is cyclic, which is not at all linear, which is not what is a unilateral. So that we can find out. And there is an incident which I will tell you. So every narrative is closed in fantasy, myth, and myth and reality actually overlap the boundaries, and that is one of the features of postmodern fiction. You have both fantasy and reality coexist, and the boundaries between two are blurred completely. The history, the fact and fiction are completely blurred up. So that you can find in this novel also. He constantly mixes up what you can say the fantasy and reality in the narration of Salim Sinai. And we have also we have also got another character in the novel, that is Shiva, who is presented as an antagonistic one, who was actually the biological son of Amina and Ahmad Sinai, but he was the putative son of Vanida, because he was given to Vanida by Mary Brener's stealth exchange. He was brought up in the underworld, so his mentality was also negative. That is why he became one of the henchmen in Indira Gandhi's brutal force, which was out to destroy human beings and violating human rights. And also Selim's birth can also be an example of the composite pluralistic multiple voice that our country actually represented, because Selim was born of Vanida, a Hindu woman, but his father was actually the British man Matthews, who impregnated her, but he was brought up by the Muslim parents, Amina and Ahmad Sinai. So in a way, Hindu wife, a Hindu mother, Christian father, and Muslim foster parents represent the confluence of Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, which is the soul of the country as well. So the interplay of the personal and national histories gives the narrative a shape and a sense of unity to the novel. So this metaphoric consciousness of history, awareness of one's own self as a blend of the past and present, makes the narrator Salim realize that the history operates on a grander scale than any individual. So the Salim Sinai's history is related to the history of the nation. So he is a part of whatever happened in the past, and he is also a part of whatever that is happening in the present. So this is what he was saying. Uh, who, what am I? My answer, I am the sum total of everything that went before me, of all I have seen being done, of everything done to me. I am every me. Everything whose being in the world affected was affected by me. I am anything that happens after I have gone, which would not have happened if I had not come. Midnight Children thus constitutes critique of nationalist rhetoric which makes linear downward journey, Salim says in the end. So in the end of the novel, he felt his body was beginning to disintegrate, with the cracks and fissures getting wider and wider. My poor body, singular, unlovely, buffeted by too much history, has started coming apart at the seams. In short, I am literally disintegrating slowly for the moment. I shall eventually crumble into 630 million particles of anonymous obvious. There was a sentence in the novel, he says he was handcuffed to history. So So, and another interesting thing which may be said about this novel is that the novel is also a city novel, because till Salman Rushdie we have novels by R.K. Narayan and Raja Rao who all idealized village as a real symbol of India. But actually, Salman Rushdie wanted to point out that it was the city that represented India best because of its plurality and composite culture. So with this, let me stop this presentation. Thank you.